it takes a long time. And even though I haven't been with that person for a couple years now, it takes a long time to like feel like you're allowed the space to really talk about this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And to not downplay it. It was not okay, and it was a big deal. It just
Is it recording, Kristen? So we're doing the whole Bill O'Reilly thing? Like, fuck it, we'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. I guarantee some of your listeners are going to get that reference. It's when Bill O'Reilly had a meltdown on live TV. Check 1, 2. Yeah, that sounds right. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
okay.
Oh, gosh, I almost forgot the most important part. No Shoes Nation. We're doing the podcast with a hat today. Just because I didn't have time to shave, so you can see the fact that I have a receding hairline, so I gotta wear the No Shoes Nation.
You have
hat.
a nice bald head, though. I feel like not everyone can pull
Yeah, but
off
it's
the
still
shaved head
it's
look.
no. I mean, the shape of it's fine, but if I don't shave for a few days, then you start seeing how far back my hairline is. And
Fun fact, guys, my dad didn't choose. Well, you didn't start shaving your head because you were receding or going bald. Wasn't it like a dare when you were at a previous job or something?
It was a previous job in Monmouth, and a couple of us that worked there, for some reason, it was like it would have been 1998. We just got a bug up our butts to decide to shave our heads. So we shaved it like with just clippers. I didn't razor it. I just shaved it, got it real close. And then like a year after that, I decided to do it again. And then I actually bicked it with a razor and just never went back. I did in my early 30s try to let it grow after I'd been shaving it bald for maybe 4 years. And when I let it grow back, I was like, ooh, I lost my hairline. Because when I first started shaving it, my hairline was right up here where it should be. And then 4 or 5 years later, I let it grow out, and my hairline was way back here. And I was like, I'm just going to keep shaving it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, thank God for Kenny Chesney, I bought his hat, and the rest is history. I'm going to keep force-feeding No Shoes Nation into this podcast.
My dad is obsessed with Kenny Chesney.
Obsessed is not a strong enough word.
I not think that's where you were going to go with that.
I know.
Absolutely
that's why I
right.
did that.
Oh my gosh.
But yes, we are officially in Kristins Apartment here in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
Which is an amazing apartment in a very historic building. And you got a killer deal on the rent here. Thank goodness.
Yep. And I actually took over, moved into an apartment that is the gal that used to live in this apartment. She's part of the friend group now that I have become so close with.
But now
so she now lives in San Francisco. So she left, moved to San Francisco. I took over, signed this lease, and
everything just worked out, which is
great.
It's so random with your history in San Francisco. It's so funny that you bumped into this new friend group and all of a sudden,
and there's ties.
Oh, by the way, we have a friend that has a great apartment, but she's actually moving to San Francisco. And if you want to take over her lease, and it just worked out.
Yep. Yeah, I was just actually thinking about it this week, how many things had to happen. You know, when you like reflect back on life and think about all the things, the people that had to
line up.
Yes, to get you to some moment or some place or achieve something or whatever it may be, whatever relationship.
Right.
So many things had to, in order to meet this group in Portland that I've become so close with and love dearly. You could go way, 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 way back. Like I would have had to get the job at the company that I currently work at because I got intro to this group of friends through one of my colleagues. In order to get the job at the company that I work at now,
that's right.
I got referred by someone that I placed who worked at my company at a previous company. So I previously had placed him and he remembered me and reached out and said, hey, my company's hiring. I would have had to make the shift to even work in recruiting in the first place because I started off my career in HR.
Yep.
So I would have had to make that shift. Like it's just like all these little things that had to happen.
And we're talking like several years ago that all these little things fell into place over several years to end up where you're at.
Yeah.
Which I don't believe necessarily in
fate.
Right. But I do believe that how do you say that? things can line up, but it's also how you take every opportunity that's presented to you. You know, if you recognize it, there's every fork in the road that you come to in your life. If you recognize the right fork to take, things can work out for you. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying that it was preordained that was going to happen. It just, looking back, you're like, oh, it's a way of looking at it as the way your life worked out. You can either be thankful for it or you can question everything. Mm-hmm. And I choose to see the goodness of every decision and everything that happens in my life. Mm-hmm. And I think you're the same way. Like the way things worked out, you're like, wow, I appreciate this. Mm-hmm. And although the way all this came together, if you were so inclined, it might lend you to think that there was a plan, even though I know there wasn't. But things really worked out for you when you came up to Portland.
Oh,
just the way everything fell together.
Oh, yeah. So I met this amazing group of people.
Yeah. But maybe that has something to do with the energy you put out there.
True. I do think that you receive back what you put out into the world.
Right. So I believe in that.
Yeah.
I don't believe
and timing is a lot of things too. I don't think if I would have moved back to Oregon at a different time in my life when I was in a relationship, I don't think that would have welcomed the type of friendships that I have now.
No, definitely.
Because I just feel so much more free now, and I think that's a big part of what we'll be talking about on the episode a lot too, or the podcast is just having some time to be alone and single and just knowing yourself, and you kind of put out that energy, whatever is true to you.
So, Girls Gotta Eat.
The episode that dropped this week, 2 days ago.
Yes. I was going to ask what else you wanted to talk about on this.
So part one, it was part one that was released.
Of Fiancé number 2.
Of Fiancé number 2. It's been an emotional week. I hadn't listened to the recording since we recorded it, and we recorded that session. I'm kind of like
at least a month ago, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because it was when you had the cold.
Yes. Yeah. It must have been 5-6 weeks ago, and I hadn't touched it or listened to it, and so even just sitting down Tuesday night to listen to it and start doing the editing work, I was reliving it again and listening to all the things. It's been very cathartic and like eye-opening and therapeutic and all the things. And I
wasn't sure how much you wanted to go into the people that have reached out to you because of that episode.
Yeah. So okay. I've had.
And are we using their names or no? Maybe not.
Well, I've already mentioned Hillary. So Hillary, and I mentioned her on the previous episode. So Hillary and I had reconnected. I'll kind of just do a little storytelling here. Hillary and we met in college. We lived actually in the same dorm freshman year. It was an all-girls dorm. And then we later became roommates and got our own place together. And she actually dated my ex-fiancé number 2 before I did. And so that's how I actually know him is through us meeting him out together when we were at a party. Her and I had a little bit of a falling out and we have reconnected. We reconnected actually. She reached out when fiancé number 2 and I first got engaged. She reached out to me and to congratulate us actually. And we stayed in touch a little bit from a distance over the course of fiancé number 2 and I's relationship. And then we really reconnected and actually like got on phone calls and had some FaceTime friend dates during the pandemic after fiancé number 2 and I broke up. That's when we really reconnected. And she and I have been in touch a lot this week. And through this episode releasing this week, I also had his ex-wife reach out to me, and we became friends on social media. I actually added her on Instagram a few months ago, and I had contemplated wanting to reach out to her for a while, but I just didn't know if it was appropriate or if it would be received well, and it was received well, and we've been just kind of getting to know each other a little bit and sending supportive messages to each other. And both these ladies, wonderful women, have reached out to me and have given really great feedback and have both expressed that it's been
cathartic,
yeah. To hear my experience, because
and almost affirming,
yes, that it was not them, it was none of us.
They weren't crazy.
No, none of us are crazy. He is a narcissist. And so it's been emotional. Like I was voice noting back and forth with Hillary this week.
But it's also been very therapeutic for all of you.
No, like emotional and in a good way too. Yeah, it's been very therapeutic, but it's been great to I feel like the three of us ladies have a little bit of a weird bond because we went through
That's a good bond.
This traumatic experience with and went through an unhealthy relationship with the same man, and it's literally, I mean, to use Hillary's words, to the T. Everything that I described in episode 6 is exactly the same shit that she went through and that he put her through. And from what his ex-wife has shared with me, also the same shit. Yeah. So this man is not original, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't think I'm gonna edit this out. We're
not making statements about him or bashing him. We're just talking about how you and these other two women can relate about it. So.
Yes, and I just feel
you have shared experiences that have helped you both, all three of you,
heal.
This is where I go into. I start trying to worry about liability. We're not making any statements or accusations about the person.
This is like I don't think this is an issue. I really don't think this is an issue. I'm not using names. I'm not.
Yeah, I know. I'm just overly cautious about it.
I'm just being. But no, you should. If you don't want people to talk about their experiences and their life experiences with you that were maybe bad, then don't be a bad person.
Right, and we're not using names, so that's fine.
But I think the point I wanted to drive home is I think through this week, having both those gals reach out to me, and we have been, kind of chatting through some stuff and talking about like our healing journeys and where we're at now. It's made me realize there's, I'm hoping the motivation for this podcast is I'm hoping that there's other ladies and gentlemen out there that have had their own experiences that will find some, I'm not a professional, so I can't give you answers, but like find a little bit of support in listening to my experiences and knowing that you're not alone, and that because when you're in a toxic relationship, especially if it's with a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath, like you feel like you're the crazy one. So just knowing that you're not alone. And I think that's just like, I feel like that's why I love podcasts to begin with. I feel like it just helps you to like realize that no matter what the topic is, like you're not the only one. Everyone, there's like little weird quirky things about being humans that we think we're the only one. Like little things like, like little phobias that you might have, or like little things like,
and you feel like you're the only one that feels that way.
Yeah.
And once you can,
or like thoughts about your body, or like insecurities that you might have, you think, oh, I'm the only one that feels like. But there's so many people out there. You realize that
everybody has those.
Yeah.
That's why when
we're all so much more alike than we are not.
The voice recordings from Hillary for me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is why you're doing the podcast.
Yes.
You made a difference in that person's life.
Yes. And she expressed just feeling a little bit of
that's
support,
what it's for.
And knowing that like it was not just her that went through this, and she felt so, she just struggled, and her knowing now that I struggled, and she knows other people that have been with that person have struggled in the same way. It just gives you a little bit of kind of like helps with closure too, I think.
Yeah. And again, neither one of us are, I know you aren't, and we're not doing this to try to get famous or try to get the most listens or clicks or whatever. It's about those moments where you help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That was super cool.
Yeah. So
I'm glad you played that for me.
Mm-hmm. But I think maybe one thing I wanted to kind of segue into is, I think the whole crazy thing. That's what I wanted to talk about. So I think. So I've mentioned this on my Instagram story. If you guys are following me on Instagram, which if you're not, you should. I also have a TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and then you can listen to the podcast on any platform. But I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I picked up.
I guess if you're listening to this, you already know, but it's Third Times Me. The word third spelled out. Third Times Me.
Thank you for clarifying. Yes, Third Times Me.
Instagram. Go to the Instagram, Third Times Me. It'll be an awesome photo of her. Yes. And then you can click on the website and it'll show all the different links. Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. Where else? Is there anywhere else?
Google Podcasts.
Yeah. So that's totally available.
Everywhere.
There's no reason you shouldn't be listening to this. Gosh damn it.
And my TikTok is actually tied to my name right now. So Kris Zervas, KrisZervas. That's also my Instagram handle. Everything is linked. So if you start clicking on something, you'll be able to find anything you need.
Yeah, it's easy. Super easy.
But the book I'm reading, I've shared with some of you guys, or with all my followers is psychopath free. Let me look at that.
Well, and I think the book references the term psychopath in the clinical definition. So we're not talking about like Silence of the Lambs, we're not talking about that kind of psychopath. It's the clinical term of the word, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we're not talking about like a slasher.
No, psychopath free, recovering from emotionally abusive relationships with narcissists, sociopaths, and other toxic people.
Yeah.
And this is an amazing book. I am not done with it yet. And
she is getting no payments. This is not an advertisement.
So
she loves the book.
I actually kind of want to shout out. I'm going to have to, I'm trying to remember. I actually found out about this book because of a girl I came across on TikTok that she's built her whole community on TikTok because she got out of a very
toxic relationship
with an actual narcissist, which I want to go into this talking about like how we use the word, and a lot of people throw these words around in casual ways that should not be thrown around casually.
Right.
But she had one of her TikToks. She recommends like 3 or 4 different books that are great reads for anyone healing from toxic relationships. And this one had amazing reviews, and it's such an easy read. And the author, I think he's British. He went through his own experiences, and he has built this community. He actually has a website.
It's a male author?
It's a male author.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And he started a website. I think it's psychopathfree.com. And there's all this like just free community resources, forums, people sharing their experiences. And then he ended up writing a couple books, and this has just been, I'm literally every page. It's
riveting.
It's just a thing.
Everything makes sense.
Everything makes sense. And this book helps you to break down. What I like about it is that he takes the approach. First of all, he takes a very nice, more optimistic, supportive, positive approach from the beginning. He reminds you that like if you're reading this book, you obviously feel like you are or were or maybe could have been in a relationship with someone that was toxic, and but he makes it clear that like you will, after you get through this and go through this healing journey, you will be stronger and more confident than you ever could have thought otherwise. Like it's almost like kind of that blessing in disguise type of mentality,
right? Which
has just been nice because like my friend and I were talking about, it's hard to unpack this stuff and talk about it and heal from it, but knowing that like on the other side you're going to be stronger from something that makes all the bullshit a little bit easier to talk about. Yeah, and be grateful for in a weird way. I know that sounds weird, but
right, because it's one of those hard life lessons.
Yeah, hard life. Yes.
So it sucks going through it, but at the end of it, you become wiser and stronger.
Yes. So, but yeah, I think one thing that I feel I've realized in just like editing the episode on Wednesday before, or Tuesday night before I went live on Wednesday, listening to myself talk about it even, and then talk about it with other people in my life too, I've realized I've downplayed a lot of my experiences because I think there's a few things. For one, when you're in something and it's so, when you're in a relationship with someone and they are making you feel like you're the crazy one and you're the insecure one and you're overthinking things and all of these things that they're doing, these red flags and these behaviors that are inappropriate, not okay, toxic, that maybe you're flagging or trying to approach and talk to them about it, and they're putting it back on you and making you feel like this is all in your head, it's all you. It takes a long time, and even though I haven't been with that person for a couple years now, it takes a long time to like feel like you're allowed the space to really talk about this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And to not downplay it. It was not okay, and it was a big deal. It just, right. And then I think it's also too, like you and I were talking about earlier, we as a society, I think inappropriately and all too often throw around the word crazy and psycho and narcissist. Like I'd never heard the word narcissist. I've not heard it used so much as I have the last couple of years. I feel like it's just people call people narcissists that are not actually narcissists. They might have
it's almost a catch-all.
They might have tendencies or they might have behaviors, but when you go through the checkbox from like a professional like psychologist of like what is
the definition of,
there's several different things and you need to meet like a majority of them to be considered a narcissist. Yeah. So I think what I feel like this podcast maybe can help do is to just like carve out a space for when you're actually in a toxic relationship, and there needs to be a space where we can actually talk about this and not feel like we're just another person that has a crazy, quote unquote, crazy ex.
Right.
Because it just doesn't hold weight. And I'm starting to finally feel
right, because if the word gets thrown out there too much, it loses its power.
Exactly.
And like it becomes generic almost.
Yes.
So you're like, no, there is actually.
It's like the word love.
Yeah. It can be overused.
It can be overused.
And it loses its credibility.
Yes. So if if you're going around telling if you're telling every female friend like that you love them, then how would your wife feel? You know what I mean? It doesn't hold as much weight. Why? Right. Yeah. So I just think that's something I'd like to encourage all of us, and I'm trying to be better about too, is just being thoughtful with your words when it comes to, people's mental states and whether or not they're crazy, or maybe they're just immature, and maybe they just did something that pissed you off. That doesn't mean they're crazy or psychopathic. I just feel like we need to be careful with these words. Yeah, definitely. So
because the words can carry a lot of weight that maybe is not intended, but
and then when people do
you throw that word out there crazy, and it's like you just say it off the cuff.
Like, what does that even mean? And then now there's this whole umbrella of narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, crazy people, assholes, immature people, and they're all being lumped under this larger big umbrella of just overall like psychopath crazy people. And then there's no that doesn't help people. That doesn't help people and build a community for folks to really be able to understand what a narcissist is, and if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, because that's a very special, unique type of situation.
It's a special kind of hell.
Yes. It's a special kind of hell. That's what it is. So I don't know. I'm just fascinated. This book is like helping me to really understand it and it's helping me to understand the person on the other side, what they were thinking, what their motives were. And that's helping me to heal even more, because I feel like I'm 90% of the way healed from this relationship. I feel like I'm in a good headspace, but there's little things,
little triggers that are still there.
Yeah, just triggers, or just even reading this book and realizing like, oh, I'm still a little hung up or a little bit not at peace or forgiving of myself of certain things. And it's just, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power.
That might be one of the key points is there a little 10% of you that is still blaming yourself for almost like I should have seen this, or is that what you mean?
Yes. And
well, okay. Yeah. And you have to forgive yourself, because there's no way you could have known.
I think and this is what Hillary and I were talking about. I think the main thing for me is, and if you guys listen to my other episodes, so just to call out episode 2, I want you to listen to all of them. But if you want to just kind of like fast track, if you're behind the relationship ones, it's episode 2, 4, and 6.
Yeah. Skip the ones where her dad's in it. They don't matter.
No, I'm kidding. No, everyone loves you. My dad's got a lot of fans. He's got a great radio voice, and he's hilarious.
That's what they say.
So episode 2, 4, 6, I talk about my relationship history. And I think something that I'm like just now, literally this week, kind of coming to realization that I hadn't let go of or forgiven myself for, or I've been blaming myself for, is the fact that I fell into this trap with this man, fiance number 2, when I feel like at that point in my life I should have known better, because I think I was 27 or 28 when we reconnected. But if you listen to episode 6, we met back in college when I was 20 years old. So there's a couple things here.
You weren't even 21 when you met him,
no,
right? 20?
I couldn't even go to the bars yet.
Sophomore year? Yeah.
So and even though we didn't obviously date until later in life, like that first initial contact point and the grooming and kind of that starting to, try kind of getting someone under your spell, or just, creating that attachment started a lot earlier on in my life. And then I've just struggled though with, I already had a couple relationships that were toxic in their own way, in a very different way, prior to fiance number 2. So I've just been struggling with like racking my brain on like, why did I fall for that? Like, why? Like why I had I not learned my lessons like already?
But you weren't falling for anything. There was no way you could have known. You know what I mean?
No. And that's what I'm realizing now through reading this book, honestly. Yeah. And then like through listening
it's not your fault. You didn't have the right information to be able to make an informed decision.
Right.
So, yeah, but all of us do this, where you beat yourselves up, you look back on your past.
I mean, even the guilt and shame episode, we talked about this.
Yeah, you beat yourself up, you look back with hindsight is 20/20, and you're like, well, I should have known better. Well, no, you didn't have all the pertinent information. So it's not your fault.
Well, that's so much, I think what life's about, right? Is like most of us are doing the best we can with the knowledge and experience we have at the time.
You make the best choices based on the information you have at the time. Mm-hmm. And there's no way you could make a better decision if you don't have more information, hindsight again.
Mm-hmm. And so I think, and that's why I want to be vulnerable and share a lot of this stuff with all of you, is because, I can't go back and change and like not date that person, not be engaged to that person, not go through that. But maybe someone else out there will be listening to this, and maybe they're in early stages of a relationship, and it's earlier on where they can maybe get out of that unhealthy relationship because they are kind of, some things are being pointed out to them, or maybe they haven't been in a relationship and they're hearing these things, and then they'll have these things in their mind of like, okay, these are red flags to look for.
Or you're putting information out there that they can have at an earlier stage in their relationship. And if they hear the information, now all of a sudden they have that information at an earlier time in their life that they can make a better decision. It's information you didn't have. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the point of it. Yeah. But I think another thing to emphasize is, guilt and shame, and don't beat yourself up for making mistakes in the past. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and honestly, even though I just, admitted that I'm struggling with that and I'm kind of getting over that, but I do still on the flip side feel like I'm in the best place in my life I've ever been. And I don't think I would be here right now if I hadn't gone through that.
Right.
So, got to see
So silver lining.
The silver lining.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so cheesy, the silver lining.
And then you have this, you have other topics on the list, or?
I want to unpack stuff in this.
Okay.
But did you have a thought on a segue? Or? No. Okay. Well, one thing just based off this conversation I had this week with Hillary, my friend from college, one thing that I thought was really fascinating is I think I actually pulled it up here on the page to reference it. So in this book, the author talks about, he calls it torture by triangulation.
Oh, we talked about this before we started recording. So explain that to me, because I wasn't sure what he meant by that.
Yeah. So this is fascinating. I'm just going to read this first little short paragraph. So, to draw you closer, the psychopath creates an aura of desirability, of being wanted and courted by many. It will become a point of pride for you to be the preferred object of their attention, to win them away from a crowd of admirers. They manufacture the illusion of popularity by surrounding themselves with members of the opposite sex, which is very common, friends, former lovers, and your eventual replacement. Then they create triangles that engender rivalries and raise their perceived value. The psychopath gleefully create love triangles, surrounding themselves with other targets to manufacture competition and make themselves seem in high demand at all times. Some targets will be used just to make you jealous, while others will be groomed as your replacement. So this is...
Okay, so I totally can relate to everything you're saying, referencing Fiancé number 2. The question is, are they doing it consciously, or is it just in their nature? Are they consciously making these moves and surrounding themselves, creating the competition? Or, I'm kind of interested in that, though. Are they aware they're doing it, or is it just their nature?
Well, I think this is part of their...
And I'm not trying to forgive the behavior. I'm just curious.
No. This is why I'm reading this book, because I'm trying to understand on a deeper level the motives and if they're conscious or...
Or is it just how they're made?
Yes. And I think, I was just trying to reference, because I read this a little while ago. Let's see, he says that they use it as, they're seeking power and control. So they want to, I'd have to go back and read through this all again. And I think I'll have future episodes where I actually dissect this book a lot more. But I think from what I've read so far, it's just, I don't think that part's maybe, what's the word you used? Unintentional, but it's just how they're wired. It's part of it's literally what keeps them thriving, and
it's just how they operate.
They get a high off of the end goal, which is all these little things they do to get there is just part of the game for them. And I think it's just they don't know how to live any other way.
Or are they even aware of how messed up that is? Maybe that's all they know.
See that part,
and
I don't know
not
yet.
trying to forgive it.
No.
All.
I think I'm still not far enough into the book though, but I feel like he's going to end up addressing that, because that's the part I don't know. Are you? Because I have such a hard time really wrapping my brain around the fact that any human could really, I'm sorry, I'm answering my question in my head as I'm talking through this. I don't think, because true narcissists cannot, they cannot like empathize and put themselves in anyone else's shoes.
They don't have self-awareness.
There's
no empathy.
No. So I think, maybe the exceptions could be narcissists that somehow come to understand and realize and maybe go to therapy and haven't, like, there could maybe be a path for someone that sought out treatment, but like,
well, of course, yeah.
They don't, I just don't think that they don't have the ability to like mentally and emotionally.
And then if you want to go deeper, is that genetic? Is it something they're born with, or is it a learned behavior based on their environment?
I think it's environment related.
Now, going back to
I think it's
so-and-so's upbringing, I wouldn't necessarily have gotten that from his parents. I don't know them that well.
His parents that well.
I don't. Mm-hmm. So, do you think it was environmental?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, Again, I'm not deep enough into the book yet, and I'm not a professional or psychologist, so I can't make any claims. But
Lindsay, we need you, Lindsay. So.
I think a lot of it is, if you have one of your parental figures or someone that was key in the upbringing of your, childhood and those formative years that has some of these tendencies or is one of these types of people.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think that's more.
I see where you're going. Yeah. Okay, I can kind of see that.
So. Yeah, it's fascinating.
As
formative years are just really crucial, guys.
But as the parental figures in your life, or even the parents in your life, as they get older, like, I'm trying to be careful how I said this. I think even a total narcissist, they're probably worse when they're in their teens and 20s and even early 30s. But then as they become older, even they gain some wisdom, life experience, and maybe can tone it down. So and maybe even figure it out and become better about it. So maybe if you meet them when they're older, you wouldn't necessarily know that they were like that when they were in their 20s. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know.
I'm trying to be very careful how I say this.
No. I don't know, because I wish I could remember her name. One of the podcasts, actually, I think it was a Girls Gotta Eat episode. They brought on an actual psychologist that specializes in narcissism.
Okay.
And she has all these books and all these things, and this is what she studies. She does research. But I remember her talking about they will never change. It is so that makes me think that, again, and guys, I need to educate. I'm working to continue to educate myself on this. So I just want to make sure that I'm not coming off as knowing everything. I do not.
No, we're not trained professionals. This is not. We're just talking.
No, but that makes me think, that's interesting. If you are never going to change, if this is like you are hardwired this way now, then that makes me think genetics must have something to do with it, not just environment, right? Because all of us have. Okay, no one's perfect.
No, everybody has a little bit of narcissism.
Well, we all have our complaints about our parents, for example, and everyone does, and we all want to, maybe. I don't know. I feel like, and as we grow up, we become more self-aware. And if there's certain things about like our parents or the way we were raised that we're not a fan of and we want to be different, then we have the self-awareness to adjust that and teach ourselves new habits. So that makes me think then if it's not.
Well, and kind of what I was trying to hint at is
so fascinating.
His
just fiance number 2.
Having met his parents briefly. I don't feel like they are as narcissistic as he is now, but maybe they were when they were in their 20s.
I understand.
You see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So it's something that can maybe get better, and that's why I asked you.
And again, I don't think. Sorry, let me clarify. From what I've read and heard, I don't think that necessarily like if your father is a narcissist or your mother is a narcissist, then you are a narcissist. I think there can be a lot of contributing factors. There can be other psychological issues with maybe one of your parents, and then because of how you're raised and other factors, you know what I mean? I don't think it necessarily has to run in the family. It's like your parents have to be, and then you are going to be, and then your offspring's going to be.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, it's a lot to understand. I'm just fascinated by this. I think I just am really fascinated by it. Like I would literally, and like I'm thinking about like enrolling in a class or something. I want to like study this more.
It's interesting.
I find it all psychology stuff. I find really
and
interesting.
This will make you laugh. You might get it because you've spent enough time around my dad, but like it's almost been a running joke with me and Pam where she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, she sees that I'm very different than my dad, but she also sees some things that are like, you're just like your dad. And and some of those are scare her, you know, which you probably see too, because you know Grandpa Jack plenty well to be able to make those comparisons. So I do definitely have I get a lot of stuff from him, but then there's another side of me that is like some people can meet me and then they'll meet my dad and be like, it's not what I was expecting. You guys are nothing alike. But then other people like you and Pam are like, yeah, I see a lot of Grandpa Jack in you.
I don't really. I'd be curious though to talk to Pam and see.
And as she's pointed it out, I've seen. Oh gosh, yes. Okay. Yeah. It's the getting off work after a stressful day and just going to a tap room.
Oh,
now with him it was just a dive bar. With me being the snobby brew guy because I worked for a brewery. I'll go
snobby to be.
I'll go to a brewery or a tap room and.
No, some of those habits or
now the difference was
behaviors.
And we can talk about Grandpa because he'll never listen to the podcast. He's not on social media, but the difference was that was his social environment. Like he would go, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here if I'm getting off a point, but his routine was, work and then go. His whole social world was a neighborhood dive bar or whatever, and he would socialize and drink and talk to people, and that was his friend circle. I literally if I have a stressful day or whatever, I will go with my earbuds, sit down and get a beer and plug my earbuds in. I don't want to fucking talk to anybody. Leave me the fuck alone. I just want to listen to lately I've been listening to like live concert recordings, Foo Fighters since Taylor just passed away, and then like stuff from the 80s or whatever. I'll listen to a Joe Rogan podcast, or I'll listen to our podcast or whatever. But that's right. Yeah. Edit that out. That's fine. But I'll listen to a podcast, and I have several that I like. But I'm not the guy that, what's that?
This is when you're at the brewery after work.
Yeah. Okay. Or anytime I just go to a tap room, I always have my headphones with me, and I will just go. I don't want to engage. Leave me alone. I sit there with a beer and I enjoy it, and I do the whole annoying like full sensory experience, and I swirl it and I smell the aroma and I try to guess what friggin' hops are in it and what malt they use. It's so tedious. And is this a Belgian yeast? Gosh, and how long did you ferment this? And what temperature was the boil kettle at?
My dad knows his beer, guys.
So dumb. But
it's a hobby.
But I don't go. Gosh, I definitely don't go out like my dad did. That was his social circle. Yeah. I go out and I want to be alone.
Yeah, you just want to be in the environment, but you don't want to engage and socialize.
I just want to go out and enjoy a good beer.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't want to buy a whole 6-pack, so I'll go to a place where I can just get a pint, because if I don't like it, then I'm not committed to the 6-pack, and I can unwind and I can get away from everybody. Yeah.
I mean, I think that speaks to, they say that like extrovert versus introvert is how you reset. And even though you are a very social person and can be extroverted, but I might be more of an introvert. I think you're definitely more of an introvert. And I think I got that from you too, because I'm super social, and I definitely get like a high on like being out and being with friends and talking and hearing people's stories and learning about people.
But you like your alone time.
I love my alone time.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I love it so much, especially after like everything that's happened and post pandemic and fiance number 2 and that relationship ending, all this, and having my own place. I'm really settling in here, and I part of me is like I could see myself being happy living alone and just having Riley and I for like I just feel like for so much of my life there was so much expectation and kind of just even assumption on my part that I would eventually like move in with a partner, and once you get serious enough you live with your partner and you get married maybe and all these things, and I don't really see it's not as enticing to me anymore, because I've learned to love my alone time like never before. And so even if I was honestly, and like Ashley and Rana even talk about it too, like I could see myself, if it was the right person, like dating someone longer term, but us having our own places and still like creating a little bit of a separation there, and that being okay.
Right.
I think it's becoming a little bit more a lot of people are talking about this now on some of the other podcasts I follow too, just kind of, you know, learning to be more open-minded to different ways of being in a relationship and living situations. Like just because you're, you know, 5 years into your relationship, if you both have your own apartments or your homes and it works for you, there's no one, like, you don't have to live together.
No, there's not a blueprint that everybody has to follow.
No, but I just, you know, we've just been doing this for so many years and so many centuries. And so I just think it's fascinating to kind of start to be comfortable with what's not the norm. Like, let's make anything should go. It doesn't matter. There's no rules.
As you're talking about that, I was kind of relating to myself, because obviously through my 20s, 2 marriages, and then a long time single, and then a relationship here and there. And so I was kind of in your mindset, but something switched when I met Pam, and it took a couple of years before I got it. But when I got into my 40s, all of a sudden I did want that, you know, long-term,
building a home together.
I wanted that partnership. I wanted that life partner. I wanted to build a home, which is not to say that has to be your destiny, but every decade your perspective is going to change.
Yeah, totally.
But I guess what I was trying to say is I kind of hear what you're saying is where I was at in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
And there was something that clicked when maybe I was just in the right place in my life and she was the right person.
Yeah.
But now,
But again, I think my point is more just like, that's great. But it's okay. It's okay. If you're in your 30s or in your 40s or in your 60s and you're happily in a relationship or happily single and you really like your space and don't want to have a partner that you live with, like, that is okay. I just think it needs to be okay with whatever.
And like Pam's mom, Linda, she met this guy, Jay. They get along great. He lives close to us. Jay, you met him, I think, at the house. Yeah. Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're so have such great time together, but they are fine where they're at. They have no desire to necessarily live together. Yeah. But they're doing great. So in their late 60s, early 70s, they're like, hey, it's a great friendship, and they both get something from it. But there's no rush to like we have to live together. Yeah. 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 So whatever works for you as a person. Uh-huh. Yeah. There is definitely no blueprint that everybody has to follow. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I feel like that's for me been like the biggest eye opener now too. And maybe that's common for once you kind of hit your 30s. I mean, it's probably different for everyone, but I just feel like you really start to realize that there's no right way to do anything. And we should all be less judgmental of other people's. That's why I don't judge other people's relationships. And I feel like, I mean, I think we're all guilty of it. When I was in my 20s, and especially when I was in relationships that I was happy in at the time, I would definitely internally judge, you know, other people and like, you know, assuming like, oh, they shouldn't be in that relationship. They don't seem happy together or whatever for XYZ, whatever reasons. But it's like, you just don't know what makes you tick.
And you don't know what's going to work for them.
No.
And you haven't walked a mile in their shoes.
I mean, obviously the exception would be like,
I mean, domestic abuse or whatever. Right. But it's like, you haven't walked a mile in their shoes. You don't know their history or how they were raised or what their environment was. Whatever works for them doesn't have to be the same for you. Yeah. And just all that matters is if they're happy. Yeah. That's all that matters.
And then even now, like what we were talking about earlier when we were eating dinner, with the making it more okay for the casual dating phases. Like that's something as a woman right now, I'm in this stage where I'm really trying to be intentional about, I have no desire to be in a serious romantic relationship right now. Absolutely none. And in fact, I want to go, I know this sounds intense, but I want to go as far to say, like, I will not let myself be in one, because it's not going to serve me at this point in my life. Right. It's going to hold me back, and it has nothing to do with like the amazing people out there that could be, but right now I just need to be all in on me. Right. Third time's me. That's the plug. That's why I named it what I named it. But
third time's me.
You know, I'm finding now in this, you know, and anyone that's on the dating apps, just dating, modern day dating. And you're not in this world because you and Pam together for a long time, but it's just
it's a shit show.
It's a lot of it's just so interesting. I you know, especially as a woman, there's this what's the word? Dad, help me.
Expectation.
Just when we were talking about earlier about like the casual dating is more societally like allowed or accepted for men in the world than women, and it's like this.
It's a double standard.
Yes, the double standard.
Totally.
And I feel like I'm trying to be really good right now in the chapter of my life of when I do maybe meet someone out, you know, when I'm out socializing at the bars, whatever, that I'm interested in, maybe it's on the apps, maybe it's, I don't know, through a friend, just being very intentional and clear and honest up front about wanting to just be casual. And if that means it's like just a, you know, emotional connection and we hang out now and again and like whatever, great. If it means it's like a physical thing because we're actually attracted to each other and like, but that's all it's going to be, and that's okay. And I've had, you know, friends, women in my life, from different generations and times too, especially, that like don't understand like how you could date casually. And I think we need to make that more okay, because it's not as accepted for women, which is so interesting to me. Like there's a lot to unpack on that, but yeah.
Well, and that's because I think we might have touched on this in some of the previous podcasts, but for so long, throughout the history of the human race, it's a James Brown song. It's kind of been a man's world. Yeah. So those standards and expectations have been set up because it's a man's world, which is fucking ridiculous, of course. Yeah.
I think as long as you're being honest about your intentions and being upfront, then that's what matters. Like you're allowed to be able to kind of be in a place and have your needs and have your boundaries. And so.
Well, yeah, because if one gender can do that, then it should be okay for both. Yeah. Just logic, just basic objective logic tells you that's stupid if one gender can't do the same as the other. There's no reason that one gender should be in the kitchen cooking dinner and the other has to be the breadwinner. That's fucking insane. Yeah. Yep. But it's all through conditioning and you go back to the history of evolution is why there's reasons in the history of evolution in the human race that certain things became the way they are. But I'm sorry, we're past that now. Yeah. And we have awareness now, and we don't have to, you know, hunt for our food anymore. So the gender roles should be equal.
I agree. I think that's a great note to end this one on.
Good call.
And we might maybe record one more.
Yeah, we might.
So.
But you know, you look amazing in your white little pullover with the collar and the tee. Oh. I like it.
You like this?
Yeah, it's a cute outfit. Very well. Thanks, Dad. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys, for
Third time's a me.
Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and all the places. Love you guys.